Can we try a different pose? This one sucks.
Never.
Come on!
Oh, hi, I'm Marc, a professional artist for 58 years and an art teacher. In this week's episode of my weekly series for artists I creatively called YouTube Art School, I'll show you how to draw better poses for your characters. Everybody struggles drawing poses, pros included. But there are a few simple tricks that you can use to drastically improve how you draw yours. Just using references is not enough. These are tricks I tell my students in private, but I will be revealing them to you too right now. Oh yikes, quickly, let's get this class started. Alright, class is in session. Pay attention. You're about to get your money's worth in professional art secrets to improve your character poses instantly. Wait a minute, that makes no sense. First, you'll have to pay the class fee of either 1 like or 1 sub, or else let's get started. First, let's get the basic stuff out of the way. Obvious stuff like practice gesture drawing, practice your anatomy, use references, you should always do that, but we're not going to focus on that today. No, the tricks I'll cover today should be applicable right away. Stuff that helps just by being aware of it and paying attention to it. Enough mysteries, let's get right into it. The first trick I always mention is to exaggerate everything. I'm sure you've heard of the line of action. I've also mentioned it in a previous video on drawing dynamic poses. That would be a good place to start your exaggerations. If your line of action looks like this for the pose you're going for, try exaggerating it to something like this, maybe. Now, this goes for that main line of action, but also for every aspect of the pose. The version I have here looks alright, but it could look much nicer if I just pushed all the curves. The main curve of action, of course, but the curves for the legs and how much the neck is bent forward too. Anything you can exaggerate, do it. It makes a huge difference. Going from a stiff-ish looking pose to something that has a lot more character. If anything, I'd recommend you push it to a point where it breaks and then dial it back a bit to make it work. Most artists tend to draw poses that are more on the stiff side. Try breaking from that. Take risks and exaggerate your poses. The second trick is always draw your characters naked. Whoa there, what? I mean, draw them naked first, then dress them up to avoid simple mistakes. I feel like this is a problem I'm always mentioning when I give art feedback, especially if the character is wearing a lot of bulky stuff. Usually when the outfit covers the joints like the shoulders or the hips of your characters. It's especially easy to make mistakes then. Those are typical problem areas. Yet you shouldn't find yourself in this kind of predicament if you drew the pose first. Here's a bad example. At first glance it might seem okay, but the more you look at it and the more, something seems off. If I continue the line of the leg here, oh yikes, it doesn't attach to the hips properly. Same with the arm. If I tried to recreate the anatomy that was being hidden by her outfit, I end up with something that looks all sorts of wonky. By drawing the pose first, you'll focus only on the pose. There's nothing else to distract you and potentially hide errors. I used to make this mistake myself often, and thankfully, it's an easy fix. Character pose first, then outfit. If you don't do this, you're asking for trouble. You hear me? Now, moving on. Wait, first, if you're instead struggling with the drawing a character part, or maybe character design, or drawing fold, correct anatomy, coloring, or anything else you need to be a complete artist, check the coupon in the video description for a huge discount on my complete art education program from home, Art School for Digital Artists. I teach all of that and much more, and I recommend it to every artist, from complete beginners to pros. We just passed the 10,000 students milestone, which is all sorts of crazy. Thank you if you're one of them. I'm offering a big discount to celebrate, valid until the end of the month only. Check the link in the description to see what the hype is all about. I've had more students than any traditional art school in the past 12 months. Not bad. Alright, enough bragging, although seriously, check it out. The next trick to improve your character poses is to focus on the silhouette of the pose, the kind of outline it creates. I call it the thumbnail test. There are interesting silhouettes and bad ones, or maybe boring would be a better word for it. The logic can be applied at a very basic level too, without even talking about character poses. This is a boring silhouette. It's a square. There's hardly anything more boring than a square. And this is a more interesting one. I think most would agree. We can apply the same idea to our character poses by choosing to overlay or arrange the different body parts in a more aesthetic way, a way that adds clarity to the silhouette. Drawing just a punching fist, for example, I could draw it this way, but a better pose would be more like this, adding a slight bend to the elbow to go from a boring silhouette to something that's a little more interesting. It's all about choosing how you lay out the limbs to add interest to the silhouette shape. Try to avoid straight lines in favor of curves, or try to avoid bunching things up together too much. Spread the parts out whenever possible. The thumbnail test is essentially to check the silhouette as a thumbnail size. If it reads poorly this small, if the pose is hard to make up with just the silhouette alone, try rearranging things around a bit. This looks better, a lot clearer. It's a better pose. Next, let's talk about the kind of references you might use. References are not all created equal. I'll always recommend looking at references when drawing poses, unless you can easily draw the human body. And while using references is good, you have to choose carefully. It's like finding a love partner. Few make for a good fit, most don't. I'm not sure about that comparison, but anyways, what makes a good reference? They should definitely pass the thumbnail test, like I just mentioned. These silhouettes, for example, are pretty boring and don't read too well. But there are a few more things to pay attention to. Be wary of tangent lines, or lines that just happen to line up with other unrelated lines. The legs here are a good example of what I'm talking about. The line of the right leg just continues right into the left leg's line. Uh-oh. Avoid that stuff. Also, try to avoid long straight lines like this one here. Here we have the exact same pose from a different angle. Much better. Everything is laid out much more nicely. Instead of a straight line like we had here, we have a lot of breaks, adding a lot of interest. If I just had one bit of complaint with this arguably better reference, it would be the tangent created by the right arm and the front of the torso here. That's not aesthetic. And there's almost always going to be something wrong. So don't hesitate to combine references if you can't find a perfect one. Maybe the arm from a different reference would work better here. By the way, check my popular class on how to draw from reference if you need help with that. Link down below. Now I have 2 tricks left that I want to share. The next one is a quick one. Avoid symmetry. Symmetry not only tends to make everything feel very static, but it often looks lazy? This is one of those tricks that applies mostly to characters seen from the front, where having symmetry might be more tempting. It almost always looks better to introduce some offset in the pose. Raise one shoulder and lower the hip on the same side. That's usually going to do the trick, but you can also adjust the body parts by varying their depth and space. Here, for example, her right leg is coming forward while the other leg is recessed in the background. It adds a lot more dynamism and makes for a better pose. Remember, symmetry equals bad, most of the time at least. Now finally, when it comes to poses, hands and feet play a massive role, unfortunately for us. Spend enough time on those. If anything, you might often want to spend more time on the hands and feet than you do for the rest of the pose. That's just how much of an impact they have. I always repeat to my students to pay close attention to hands and feet when practicing gesture drawing, because it often makes or breaks a pose. The typical issues I see are floaty feet that don't feel properly grounded, something like this, and hands that were clearly rushed, like those. Wow, such skill. I know these aren't easy things to draw, but you don't need to be a master at drawing hands to get good results. I recommend you just learn a few hand poses or hand gestures that you use often and get real good at those. Like 3 to 4 hand gestures, like a closed fist seen from the front, a relaxed hand seen from the front, maybe a hand holding something. Start with that. Learn a few hand and feet recipes, basically, and get real good at them. Look at my character's feet here, for example. They're almost all the same. Look at this shape. Same here. Same here. Mind blowing. Hands and feet will make or break your poses. Give them enough love. I have a class on how to draw hands and feet in case you want to dig in a bit deeper on that subject too. Link down in the video description. And that's gonna wrap it up for this week's class. Keep these simple tricks in mind and your character poses should look a lot better. I hope it helps. Let me know in the comments. Now, if you made it all the way until the end, you win free brushes. That's right. If you haven't already, you can go ahead and use the link in the video description to download one of my 2 main custom brush packs I use all the time. They're some of my favorite brushes. It even includes the line art brush that I used in this video. It's the best in the world, or your money back guaranteed. There's even another link to a video showing how to best use them. Wow. By the way, I'll upload these drawings to my Instagram in case you want to use them as reference. Again, link in the description. Now make sure you're subscribed with notifications on to be on time for next week's class. You better not be
Come on!